Hey guys, I'm Dan from ShastaBubba Adventures, and this is the second in a series of videos about the principles of ultralight backpacking. My goal here is not to be telling people how they should be backpacking or that their way is wrong, but simply to offer suggestions about how to lighten the load with the ultimate goal of increasing your enjoyment of wilderness adventures. I'll also be adding some thoughts about how these ideas translate to life in general, but don't worry if you're just here for the beginner's guide to ultralight backpacking. The philosophical parts will come later on. So the rule for today is focus first on the big stuff. And I'll be showing later how there is a surprising connection between this rule and the larger life issue of stress management. So the big stuff in backpacking is the big three, which refers to the heaviest gear in your pack and consequently the greatest opportunity for weight savings if you switch them to ultralight gear. I'm talking here, of course, about the shelter, the sleep system, and the pack. By the way, some people break out the sleep system into two categories, one being the bag/quilt and the other being the sleeping pad. So if you see references to the big four, that's what they're talking about. It's all the same thing. Some people just choose to number them differently. Now, this is the best place to start the transition to ultralight backpacking because the payoff is huge. I made another video detailing my personal journey here, and rather than repeat all that, I'll cut to the chase and tell you that I saved over 8 pounds by switching to UL gear. Now, it should be said that backpacking is a very strenuous activity, and switching to lighter gear doesn't suddenly mean that you're just going to go skipping down the trail. I recall the first time that I picked up my pack after making all these changes, being disappointed by thinking that it still feels really heavy. What I have noticed is that I have much more stamina throughout the day, and so I'm able to hike longer distances without overworking. With traditional gear and a 45-pound pack, my best days were probably around 12 miles. With UL gear, a 15-mile day is no big deal, and it's usually closer to 17 or 18 with an occasional 20-mile day thrown in. Also, I'm able to get up and do it again the next day without being ground down over time. Less wear and tear on the hips, back, and knees is something to appreciate over the long haul. Best of all for me is the feeling of picking up the pack after each little break and not having to strain to put it back on or dread each step going down the trail. Instead of hiking head down and stumbling along, straining just to keep moving, I love being able to stay alert and look around and soak in the beauty of the mountains and the forest, having the leftover energy to take in the little details of the trail. I believe that when you are making this transition, you will be served best by taking things in this order: shelter first, then sleep system, and most importantly, saving the pack as the last thing that you change. This is partly because ultralight packs are designed to carry lighter loads. So if you switch out the pack first, you're probably not going to be happy carrying 40 pounds of traditional gear with the lighter suspension of an ultralight pack. Also, UL packs are designed with smaller volume in mind since UL gear takes less space. So if you change the pack first, the old stuff just isn't likely to fit very well. Now here's some specific gear suggestions to get started. A person can spend a fortune on ultralight gear, but I'm assuming that you're just UL curious, and so here are my best budget ideas, and there will be links in the description below for all of these. For the shelter, check out the Skyscape Trekker by Six Moon Designs or the X-Mid 1 by Durst & Gear. Or if you want a super budget option, there's also the Skyscape Scout for just $160. I have a friend who started out with the Scout, and 10 years later, that's still the tent he uses, and he says it meets all his needs. For two people, I wouldn't look any further than the X-Mid 2. Great price, great design, one of the few tents listed as a two-person that actually fits two people. For the sleep system, assuming that you're willing to try out a quilt, I would look first at the REI Magma Quilt or the Enlightened Equipment Enigma. They're about the same price and weight for the 30-degree rating, but the Enigma is handmade, so better quality, and you can bump up the rating and make other customizations for just a few dollars more. On the other hand, you can get a great deal on the Magma by using your annual 20% discount or just watching for sales. For a sleeping pad, you can start out like most folks do with a closed cell foam pad for as little as $50 for a torso length pad. Very light and practically indestructible. Once you've paid your dues by experiencing that misery, then you can bump up to the Thermarest X-Lite and actually sleep at night. Or better still, the Nemo Tensor, which is more comfortable for about the same price and weight, although it is not quite as high in R value. When you're finally ready to look at a lighter pack, you really can't do better than the Kakwa 55 from Durst & Gear. This is one time where the budget choice is also the best choice, amazingly. Another pack worth considering looking at, though, is the Ohm from ULA. The Kakwa and the Ohm are virtually the same weight and capacity, but the Kakwa is a bit more water resistant, while the Ohm, made from Robic, is likely a bit more durable. ULA now offers all their packs in Ultra also, but then it gets to be $100 more than the Kakwa. Both packs are great though, and both are great companies. Okay, so those are some quick ideas for focusing first on the big stuff. Now, what does this rule have to do with stress management? Well, when someone comes into counseling complaining of high stress, we usually will start by teaching the basic stress management tools, things like deep breathing / meditation, the importance of exercising and eating healthy, and maybe the use of journaling as a constructive outlet for negative feelings. Now, those are all really great skills to make use of. But the hard truth is that if you really want to reduce stress in your life, by far the best thing to consider is making a major change in your life. Making big change is scary though, so we often piddle around with all these kinds of management techniques, doing everything possible to avoid looking at the obvious source of stress. That's partly because change, even positive change, is the unknown. And we humans have a fundamental fear of the unknown. If you visualize a set of scales, you know, those scales with the balancing dishes, and on one side is the fear of the unknown, and on the other is the pain of staying the same way. The pain of staying the same way has to outweigh the fear of the unknown in order for us to be willing to make big change. So it's often the case that we need to try stress management tools for a while before that pain of avoiding change becomes great enough that we're willing to consider focusing on the big stuff. So that might mean recognizing that maybe you hate your job or are in an unhappy relationship. Perhaps your group of friends are toxic, or you might be struggling with addiction. Focusing on the big stuff is difficult and scary. But if you really want to reduce stress in your life, making major change is often going to be the thing that brings the highest payoff for the effort. If you imagine stress as being like a dam that holds back a reservoir of water, using stress management tools is like the spillway. It helps to manage the stress, yes, but only so much. Making big change is like taking the level of the reservoir down by half, much bigger impact. And I'll just add that it's important to differentiate between the things I can change and the things that are beyond my power to change. Having a diagnosis of cancer, for example, is a life situation that causes a whole lot of stress and is outside my power to change. However, within the context of that sucky situation, I do have the power to focus on things like getting the best treatment available and squeezing the most out of each day of life. To quote Maya Angelou, if you can't change it, change your attitude. Sometimes, though, we assume something is unchangeable, but if we allow ourselves to think the unthinkable, often there is a path out. But it's what I call an I don't wanna path. It may be difficult and require courage to take that path. We can find that courage by considering the alternative. Consider what your life will be like 5 years or 10 years down this same road without making the big change. What's your stress level going to look like then? Big change is not always possible, but it is possible a lot more often than you might assume. Consulting a counselor or a spiritual advisor, some independent, objective, outside person can help sort out the possibilities And I know this is an oversimplification. I certainly don't mean to minimize the effort involved. However, if one of the obstacles to making change is fear of hurting others, it might be the case that avoiding change actually results in more harm to your loved ones, as you build up resentment and bitterness over time and become not a fun person to be around. So with love in your heart for yourself and for others, you will find within yourself the courage to change the big stuff. Okay guys, that's it for today. Next time we'll shift gears and take a look at what a difference can be made by looking at the little stuff. Thanks for watching. Thanks especially for subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Take care.